Everybody, after quite a large break, we are back
We're
for
back.
another episode of Digging Deep. We're your hosts. I'm Tara.
I'm Cody.
And it has been how long since we've been here?
I think our last one was September 5th.
That's a long time. We've been busy, though.
We've been very busy. Yes.
I moved into a new house. What did
Yes.
you do?
What haven't I done? We've been working on catalog stuff. We've been visiting like farm trials, some breeder open days. It's been a lot.
And our own trials have been like in full peak and swing. We've got to take data on everything that we grew.
Yes.
So you went away. Where did you go?
We went to Wormenhausen, Netherlands, which is the home of Bijou Seeds. For those who don't know, Bijou Seeds is a breeder of vegetable seeds, and they sell worldwide. They bring us the ever so popular crops like Napoli carrots, Naval carrots, expect and expectation cabbage, Oneida onions, a lot of our beets. They do a lot.
They do a lot, and like Napoli carrots, like so good.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
So what did you learn?
Well, I learned that they do things differently in Europe for farming, but like it's very interesting. I did learn something very interesting. So that Oneida onion that I mentioned, it took them 25 years to breed that from start to finish until it went from like starting breeding until it was commercially available for customers.
That's crazy. But so it would be to stabilize the seed to make sure that every year it grew true to what it was supposed to?
Yeah, and because it flowers every other year, not every year, so it takes twice as long to get it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. So I felt bad. So the sales rep, I was like, I'm so sorry for bothering you about asking for new onions every year. I'm so sorry.
But I mean, they should be on it though.
They should be. And they are. They have lots of things in the pipeline, and I'm sure we'll see lots in the years to come.
Yeah, and for comparison, they say it takes like 7 to 9 years to stabilize a hybrid of like say pepper seeds.
Yep.
So I mean 25 is a long time.
That's like almost your career's work right there.
Like, what did you do? I made this one onion.
Yes. I made this onion.
One onion. And where else did you go?
We also went to upstate New York, but that was in August. In Netherlands, we did some farm visits, Bijou, a couple other suppliers, that sort of thing. We've been around visiting some suppliers as well, so yeah.
All right, and before we get into questions, you did mention you've been working on the catalog.
We have been working on the catalog.
So what's new in the catalog?
We have a lot of new things. So I did a quick count before I came here. So we have 33 new vegetable varieties.
One of which is here.
It is right here.
This is our new pie pumpkin. It is called Vendetta.
Yes.
I did get permission to release its name.
Yes.
And it's amazing, and it is an awesome pie pumpkin. A lot of flesh in there.
Yeah.
And then cute for decorating as well.
Absolutely. Really heavy yielding too. Yeah. You look down the row and it's just orange.
It's a nice deep orange, though. I don't know if it's coming across in the video, but these are quite amazing and like very hefty.
Yep.
You can eat the seeds, you can eat the flesh, you can decorate with it.
Yep. We also have 3 new herb varieties, and then we have 22 new flower varieties, and 2 of which are brand new crops we've never had before, and one of them is a new species of a crop that we currently carry.
I'm very excited. Lots of new things coming. Very excited to get the catalog. When will people get the catalog?
So catalogs will start shipping out end of November, early December, and that's when customers should start seeing them in their mailboxes.
Nice. It's almost like getting the Sears wish book in the mail.
Yep.
I had a big part of helping with this catalog, taking the photos and whatnot, and I'm excited to see it, even though I know everything that's in it.
Yes.
It's still something to like hold the print copy in your hand.
There's something about it, like being able to flip through a physical copy of something and being like, I want this and I want this. Everything's so readily available right in front of you, whereas like on our website, you can still kind of do that, but you have to search for everything first instead of having it all right in front of you.
Yeah, and even though we have computers directly in front of us, when we want to talk about something in the catalog, we grab the catalog. We don't look it up on the website.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
We are catalog lovers.
Yes.
All right. Look at all these questions I have.
We've got a lot of questions. Well, it's been a while, so.
I only picked some of them. I was kind of hoping that people would have questions for us. Jennifer says, hi from Tatamagouche.
Hi, Jennifer.
And we have a giveaway. We have 30 tulip bulbs. We were over at the bulb warehouse yesterday.
Yes.
And I asked our bulb manager what his favorite tulips were, and he gave us these. These are the Big love tulips. So we'll give those away later in the live. Stay tuned for that.
And I'm not going to tell the question yet, but I will say the question does involve having one of our fall or spring catalogs. So have those ready for when we have that question.
Yes. All right, let's start. First question is from Al. Shout out to Al. How can I design bulb plantings for continuous spring blooms?
Different species of bulbs and different varieties, because different varieties bloom at different times, and then different species, of course, will bloom at much different times. Yep.
Yeah. So are you looking for, like, when you're looking in the catalog, what would you be picking? Something that says early, late?
Yep, so if I want tulips, I would choose something that says early, and then I would choose something else that's mid, and then I would choose another variety that says late.
Mm-hmm. And we did experience something last year where we had a kind of a tricky season that the tulips didn't care what season they were. They were like, we're going to bloom when we bloom.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just how gardening goes sometimes.
It is. I think we have other bulb questions. Oh, giveaway. Rhonda says, which spring bulbs are most pest resistant, or how can I protect bulbs from being eaten by squirrels or other animals?
So first I would say no bulbs are totally resistant to pests. If they're hungry enough, they go after anything. Alliums, they don't like. Fritillaria, squill, hyacinths sometimes. Those would be the number one ones. And I have seen people burying like chicken wire underneath their soil surface a few inches down and putting the bulbs underneath that. And that seems to stop a lot of rodents from digging down and eating the bulbs.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot more work, but that is an option.
We have so many chipmunks and squirrels on the property that we never actually plant crocuses anymore.
Yep.
They just eat all the crocuses. It's a waste of time for us. So we just don't plant them, and we really don't have any trouble with them taking anything else.
Yeah. And we're working with the environment in that sense. We're not working against it.
Yeah.
And if you do really want your crocus, you can also get stuff like Critter Ritter. You can start applying that, when crocuses start coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to reapply it, when stuff gets wet or if it rains. So be aware of that, but it is another option.
Yeah. And they're just hungry. I mean, if they had more food readily available, they probably wouldn't be digging up your bulbs.
This is true.
All right. Ned wants to know, when should he fertilize his perennials? In the fall, or should he wait till spring?
You want to wait till spring. Feeding the perennials now would be like me drinking a cup of coffee at 10 o'clock at night right before I went to bed. It would keep me up, and then I will not be okay the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
So best time to do is in the spring, and then usually right before or just after they're flowering too.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Larry wants to know, how can I protect tender perennials from frost? Which perennial plants benefit the most from mulching?
So all perennial plants benefit from mulching, not only for hardiness, but also for like moisture retention and such as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was the first part of that question?
How can I protect tender perennials from frost?
Row covers, light sheets, if you have some old quilts, those as well. If we're talking about something you're trying to get a harvest off of, you can go ahead and, cover them. But, if we're talking like ornamental perennials, this is usually when they start slowing down for the season anyway. So it's best to just let them do their own thing naturally.
And what would you consider a tender perennial? Would it just be something that like maybe isn't quite for our zone, or?
Yeah, so like that, it kind of goes interchangeably with like hardy annual and tender perennial kind of thing. But yeah, usually right on the edge of like your hardiness zone.
Yeah. Jennifer has a question. She says, where do you recommend storing bulbs that I planted in pots? Lasagna pots. I've done this before and they were rotted by springtime.
So the best place to put them is in a cool basement, attached garage that's unheated. You might be able to do it from like an insulated detached garage, but there's no guarantee. You also run into pest problems with detached garages and sheds as well. You want to keep the soil temperature just like around 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, just above freezing.
Yeah, and that is a great question, Jennifer. It does play in part with Sylvia's question. She wants to know, how deep should I plant bulbs for different flowering times? I heard of the lasagna planting method, but I'm nervous to try it.
Yeah.
So what is the lasagna method?
So the lasagna method is when you plant bulbs by their size, because that kind of like you would put your bigger bulbs at the bottom and your smaller ones at the top. Typically smaller ones like crocus will bloom faster or sooner than like daffodils and tulips. And you plant those ones further down, so then the crocus come up first, they flower, do their thing, and then just as they're finishing, the bigger bulbs, the tulips, the daffodils should start flowering.
Do you think it would be possible to do the lasagna planting and have everything flower at once? Like to have your daffodils, tulips, and say like squill and muscari all in bloom.
Maybe that would be very cool. There might be some options there if someone wants to try that at home.
I think it'd have to be like so tricky on like the timing.
It would be.
Especially because like a tulip, it takes a long time for it to emerge and form its head and then open.
Yep.
Jennifer says we should do a little tutorial. We should do a tutorial on how to plant a lasagna container.
We can do that.
That would be very fun. So how deep should she plant them? Should she change the planting depths when doing lasagna planting or stick to what is recommended?
So sometimes people will stack like the same species together, like tulips. So they'll put like tulips up here and then more tulips down here. And just because they're further down, they will take longer to get to the surface. So usually when the first tulips come up, they're just finishing, and then the second ones will come up.
Yeah.
So you can change it a little bit, but like putting crocuses, 6-7 inches underneath the soil surface, it will be very stressful on them because they are so small and they are looking for a very short path to flower.
Yeah. I do know that tulips and daffodils, they don't mind a deep plant because they live in our compost pile, and sometimes their stems are like long.
Yes.
We do have another question on here. How do you dig up and store dahlia tubers for the winter?
Yep, so once you get a light frost where it kills all the foliage off or turns brown, you can cut those off at the soil surface. Dig up your tubers. You want to let them dry somewhere. You don't want to store them while they're damp. That'll just cause some rot and mold. And then once they're dry, give them a little squeeze. They should we dried some this past winter. They kind of become shriveled, and don't panic. That's pretty normal. And then once they're very dry, kind of solid, shriveled, put them in storage for the winter, and then in spring you can bring them out and start growing them.
Yeah, some people put them in like sawdust to absorb moisture.
Yeah. Ours were just bare root and they did just fine.
Absolutely. Something I like to do if I know I'm going to be storing things is like saving all those little silica packs that come in like your shoes and all like your pants pockets that absorb moisture.
Yep.
Because that'll absorb any moisture next to your bulb. So if you're going to store things, stockpile those.
Now I will say where they were stored was in our basement here in the main building, and it's about 20 degrees down there and it's quite dry. So if you have an unheated basement with a clay floor, for example, it might be more humid and a lot more cool, and who knows what that's going to do to them.
Yeah. We have another question, and it does coincide with the question that we have here. It is garlic. When to plant and where do I get garlic?
Yeah, so you can start planting garlic usually around when the weeks are about 10 degrees Celsius consistently. Any higher than that, if you plant the garlic, it'll start growing. If it's only coming, like a half an inch out of the soil surface, it's not a big deal, but you don't want to see lots of growth going into winter. So yeah, wait for that 10-degree mark, and then basically when you're planting them, I'm going to try to break these apart.
And while you do that, you can actually get it on our website. It's listed in our bulb catalog and our seed catalog, all the different varieties of garlic that we have, and it's available now, and we are shipping it out now.
Yeah. So this is our clove. So this is what I broke off of our main bulb. So I'm going to be planting this two to three times the width of this bulb down, and I'm going to be planting it in this direction with the teardrop pointing up. That's where all the growth will come from, and then the roots come from the other side.
And are you keeping the paper on?
No. So you can leave the paper on, but you don't want to husk it, or you don't want to peel it like you would for when you're cooking. You want to leave that on.
Right. So you don't want it to be bare.
You don't want it to be bare.
And then what do you do with your garlic? Are you going to cover it, mulch it?
Yep, you can mulch it. Some people straw. If you have bark mulch, if you have compost, anything like that, anything will really work for mulch.
And why do you mulch your garlic?
You want to make sure it doesn't get heaved up in the springtime through the freeze-thaw cycle. If it does get heaved out of the soil and then you get a warm spell and then you get a cold spell, you could damage it. It could die if there's a hard frost. So having the mulch there just helps keep it in the ground.
And are you fertilizing?
You can put some bone meal with it, but I'm not fertilizing. You want to make sure your bone meal has no nitrogen in it. Some of them do come with a 2% nitrogen, which is the first number in the fertilizer ratio. But realistically, you're looking for bone meal that only has like a 10 to 15% in the second number of the ratio.
Right. And we actually planted garlic 2 years ago on like December 1st. We'd already had some snow.
Yep.
But we didn't get it in, and we were busy. And then there was like one nice day, the snow had melted, and we went out, bundled up. And we had an excellent crop of garlic.
And as long as you can work the soil, you can plant your garlic. It can be 3-4 degrees outside, like it was on December 1st, and we planted garlic.
Yeah, and what would be the downside of planting your garlic too soon?
Too soon, so it's going to start growing. and that's not what you want it to do. You do want it to grow, sorry, but you don't want it to produce foliar growth, like above ground growth. You just want it to build root growth. And by planting it at that like 10 degree stage, the roots will slowly, continually grow, but you're not going to get any bud break, so to speak, where the foliage will pop through the soil.
Yeah, and this garlic, this is music garlic, and this is from our harvest. We harvested this early this spring. We have been curing it. It first in the greenhouse and now in the main building, and she's ready to replant or eat.
Yep.
Hopefully to eat.
Yes.
Natasha says, we grew sugar baby watermelon here in Labrador this summer. Are there other watermelon varieties that would do well here?
So any of the small icebox types, we do have a new watermelon coming, but I won't say what the name is yet, so look for that in our new catalog. But yeah, any of those like 6 to 8 pound watermelons, those are the best ones. We do have a bigger one called Sun Sugar, and it's like a more elongated type of what I would call like a California type watermelon. Those ones are a little bit harder. They need a lot more heat and a lot more time to develop, so I would say stick to the smaller ones.
Yeah, and a smaller one's going to give you like more smaller watermelon than the bigger varieties.
Yeah.
Which is better eating. I recommend the Yellow Doll, but it's my favorite, and I'm biased, so
yes.
Don't listen to me, but do listen to me. Miranda says, back to planting bulbs in pots. If you had a big enough cold frame, would that be a good spot to store lasagna pots?
Yep, you could do that. I would mulch the sides of the pot just to help with that freeze-thaw cycle. That could just be soil, or if you have some bulk bark mulch laying around, any of those would work.
Yeah. I think storing in a cold frame would be a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have something above ground, I think, don't you like gain a zone? Like if you're a zone 5 and it's above ground, you'll now be a zone 4.
Basically, yeah. So like a lot of perennial like nurseries, when they're storing perennials and trees from year to year, they basically group them all together like penguins in the Antarctic, and then they basically hill the sides with a lot of mulch or soil, and that they kind of heal them in, so to speak, and then come the spring they'll pull them out. You might get some death, but for the most part everything should live.
Yeah, and like last year we wanted to overwinter some full speed ahead plants that we never got a chance to plant in the ground.
Yeah.
We planted the pot and all in the ground.
Yeah, we had about, I want to say 30 or 35 pots, and we plunked them in the ground in the fall. They stayed there all winter, and we pulled them up in the spring, and they all lived fine. So
yeah, so if you wanted to like bury the pot in your garden and pull it up when the soil is workable, and then clean up the pot, put it on
and
your
I've
patio.
done that at home with different perennials and shrubs as well, and it works fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So all sorts of ideas.
I actually have a cool fact on what you said about stuff being a zone lower when it's above ground.
Mm-hmm.
So sugar maples.
Yes.
So the tops of the plants, so everything above ground, is usually hardy to minus 35 to minus 40 degrees Celsius until you get like major dieback.
Right.
Their roots are only hardy to about minus 5.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Which I thought was very cool.
I discovered that you could start sugar maples by seed, and I got really excited thinking that I was going to be like, I don't know, like a maple syrup farmer. And then I was like, it'll take you 30 years planting a maple tree by seed, so you can harvest any maple syrup from it, let alone enough to like fill a bottle.
It's an investment.
It is if you want to be a maple syrup farmer, buy an existing property with sugar maples, because you don't have time to do that.
No.
I'd be like in my 70s finally getting to like make it as a maple syrup farmer.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
It's not gonna happen. Terry Ann says, any harvesting or processing tips for loofahs?
For loofahs? So yeah, basically you want to let them dry. We are working with some loofahs. We're kind of testing different methods to see what works, but from what we've read and from what we've tested, when they do dry, you kind of roll them like a rolling pin, and that kind of loosens the outside skin from the outside, and then you can kind of peel the outside off. And then most of the seeds should fall out too. They should become like, they should let go from the flesh inside, and then you can kind of like shake them out, and then you're just left with, the flesh inside that you just let somewhere dry.
And how long in between, like, would you harvest and try and peel the skin on the same day, or would you let them cure?
I would let them cure for a little bit, yeah. Some of ours last year, because it was so wet, it took like a very long time for them to dry down because there was so much moisture.
And some of them didn't. And it was a really hard year last year because of how moist it was.
Yep.
A lot of the pumpkins didn't do well.
Yeah, we're still playing around with loofahs and harvesting and curing tips, so stay tuned for that in the next couple of years.
Let's see. Darla says, getting ready to harvest my carrots. What should I do to help them stay good over the winter, and how should they be stored?
Yep. So you want to store them in a cool place in a high humid environment. A lot of people will store them in like a clay floor basement in some sand kind of thing. You want to cut the tops off. Make sure you don't store any damaged or diseased carrots because they will rot and that will spread. But yeah, I think the major thing is to store them in a cool, high humid area.
And do you recommend waiting for frost or harvesting before frost?
So that totally depends on the person. If you want a better tasting carrot, you can wait till you get one or two light frosts, and then that'll really bring out the sugars in the root.
Yeah, because it converts their
It converts starches into sugars.
Yeah, delicious. Yeah. And what about parsnips?
Yep, same with parsnips.
Yeah, I think all parsnips should have a frost on them before you harvest them.
Yep.
We haven't harvested any of our carrots yet.
We haven't yet. Actually, the parsnips and the carrots are the last things for us to harvest and really look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were peeking at them yesterday, though, to check for size.
Yes.
And I'm very excited for our carrots.
We were looking at some carrots today from some of our farmers, and they grew some carrots this year.
Nice. Well, yeah, John and I were over to visit some commercial growers last month, and we were at a carrot farm, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And maybe we'll ask anyone who's watching who's grown carrots too. So I'll kind of explain what we were seeing, and maybe if you put in the comments of what you've been seeing, I'd be really interested to see. But because it's been so dry in our area this year, carrots grew very, very long because that taproot was searching for moisture, and they stayed really, really skinny. And then the last month we started getting quite a lot more rain, and then they bulked up. So they've like grown out, and they're like between 8 and 10 inches long. So the carrots are massive this year. So I'd like to know what some of our customers at home are getting too.
Yeah, Jennifer says that she stores her carrots in shredded paper from the office, and it works awesome.
Yep, that would work too.
Yeah, I usually just put all mine into cake.
Yep.
I love a good carrot cake. While we're waiting for people to answer, let's ask another question. Lisa wants to know, how do I dispose of diseased plant materials to prevent issues next year?
So for any diseased plant material, you never want to put it in your backyard compost because there's always the risk that the compost pile might not get hot enough and it's going to kill any of those fungal infections, any of that bacteria or anything. You want to make sure that's always going to municipal compost or garbage. Usually if it's going to municipal compost, they do properly heat up their compost piles for disposal, and then you don't have to have the worry that you might have it on your property, and then if you use that compost might be potentially spreading it around.
Yeah, and what sort of things like so let's say powdery mildew will eventually take out all of your cucurbits, pumpkins, squashes. Would you store that material, or would you dispose of that in your local garbage?
Powdery mildew is just like a foliar disease. It doesn't really affect the seed all that much, and usually when that infection sets in is when you want it to break down the plant material so you can make harvest easier. If we're getting into, like, a really good example would be tar spot on maple trees. It's super, super common. It's, maple trees get these black spots on the leaves. Mm-hmm. That's a fungal infection. The best way to treat that is to take all the infected leaves away and put them in your municipal garbage or compost and ship them away.
Right. Yeah, and if you got anything like clubroot, you want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
What about blight on your tomatoes or potatoes?
Yeah, that's a big one. You want to, as soon as you find blights, especially for your area, I would be bagging that right away. I wouldn't even be hauling it to the compost bin. I would be putting it in garbage bags right away and tying it off to make sure it's not going to spread any further.
Oh, someone's asking if it's buffering really bad. I hope the live stream isn't buffering. We are in a new location, so let us know if you are having issues, and we'll get our IT guy working on that.
Yes.
I hope it's not doing that. I'm very sorry. Sonia's watching. Hi, Sonia. So Carl asks, how do I clean up my garden without disrupting beneficial insects or wildlife? Should I remove all dead plant material or leave some for habitat?
Yeah, so I think I can speak for both of us that we don't do any real cleanup until later into the spring. We let all that material sit there for bees and other insects until they wake up for the spring, and then once they're actively moving around and starting to breed and feed, then we can go ahead and remove all last year's growth, all the old leaves, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know where the trend of like raking all your leaves to have a pristine lawn came from, but I don't want to do that.
Hmm.
Like that's too much work for me, and I'll just wait till like my first grass cutting and it can mulch down into organic matter to
Yep.
sit on my lawn.
And if you want a really good natural mulch for your, or even compost for your lawn, is if you just mow over the leaves, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And they'll break down to nothing.
Yep.
Or you could add some of those leaves to your compost pile.
Yep. It's lots of nitrogen and nutrients going back into the lawn. So.
Yeah, I don't want to clean up anything.
Yeah.
But we do have a question. Let me see if I can find it. Um, when should I cut back perennials and which ones should be left alone?
Yes. So any perennials that are herbaceous that die back every year to the soil surface, those can be removed at any time after they've died back. The ones you want to leave alone, though, are any of the ones that set buds in the fall. And a really good example of that is rhododendrons. Do not trim rhododendrons until after they flower. If we were to cut back rhododendrons now, we would be removing all of next year's flowers.
And I guess like hydrangeas are very similar.
Yep, there's different hydrangeas, but yep.
And something that you could remove would be perhaps hibiscus. You could remove it, you could leave it. I usually leave it because I'm a lazy gardener.
Yep.
But you can remove it because it produces new buds from the ground.
Yep.
And
same with
milkweed.
same with milkweed. Like if you wanted your say maple tree, birch tree to flower, you would trim those after or in the springtime after they flower because they've already set their flower buds this fall.
Yeah. So basically, what are we cutting back? Anything?
Yes.
That's dies back.
Yep.
Um,
Good rule of thumb is if it's like a woody shrub or something, you can leave it until after it flowers. If it's herbaceous, you can cut it back now.
All right. And Ashley says, how can I divide or transplant perennials in fall without chalking them, or should I just wait until spring?
So basically, once they go dormant, once all their above ground pieces have all died back, you're good to divide then and transplant them. There's not as much of a guarantee they'll survive the winter, but you can still do it and it still works fine. But if you do want that guarantee, then the spring is the best time before they break dormancy.
Yeah, I transplanted some coneflowers, some echinacea on the property the other day, and they seem to be happy, but we won't know until next year how they did. Things like hostas, like even if you tried, you couldn't kill that.
Yeah, hostas are pretty hardy.
They're very hardy.
Last fall, I was actually planting native trees in our yard while the ground was solid, full of like frost. I got through the soil surface and got down there and planted them, and they did fine. But they are native, so they are used to the cold weather. But
yeah. I planted a clematis yesterday. We picked up a bush clematis that's in our bulb catalog this year, and I planted it in front of the store. We pulled out a geranium that wasn't looking very good, and we planted the bush clematis, and I'm very excited to see that grow. And we labeled it and marked it, and we did something new this year where we put the year on it, so
That's a
we
good
can
idea.
kind of remember like how long it's been.
Yeah.
But it should get like 24, 36 inches high.
Mhm.
Very excited for it. All right, what companion plants pair well with bulbs for early spring displays?
So I would say any herbaceous perennials, especially if you want like a bulb bed. I'll use hostas as an example. They come up much later after the bulbs are basically done flowering. So if you have a hosta bed, I would go ahead and plant all the bulbs you want in there. The bulbs will come up in spring and flower early spring and mid-spring. And then by mid-spring, early summer, they'll be gone and the hostas will start growing.
Yeah, and if you wanted something that was going to bloom in tandem with your bulbs, what are some early blooming plants?
Heliobores is a really good one.
Oh, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Bleeding hearts.
Bleeding hearts, heaths and heathers. Yep.
What else blooms in the spring? Phlox. Some phlox blooms a little early.
Yep. I'm thinking of like some trees, like larch trees, tamarack trees. Yep.
Forsythia. Look who said that correctly.
Yep, exactly. Forsythia, hemerocalis, which is witch's hazel. That's another really good one.
Yeah. Do you actually have a garden marker that works? Yeah, I actually just use a Sharpie on, we got some new stakes that we were trialing.
Yeah, we got some new stakes. We actually have some different markers and different types of pen-like things we're trying. So we'll see how those work for a year or two, and then maybe that's something we'll start carrying.
Yeah, we have some things that we have staked, but they were like, we put stickers on them and then covered it in packing tape. But like over the years, like the sun has like broken
Yeah.
the stake or faded the ink.
Yeah, like Sharpie, we usually get a good year out of those, and that's
Yeah.
basically it. Same with Sharpies, even writing them on, they fade after a while. But we have some pens we're trying and some markers that like are fade resistant, so
Nothing worse than like pulling out the tag and being like, "Oh, I can't read what it says."
yes.
um, oh, I think we did how deep we should plant our garlic, right?
Yes.
Okay. Larry, how can I protect tender perennials from frost? Oh, we did that one. All right. I had a good crop of winter squashes. How do I ensure they last through the winter?
Squash. Okay. So we have 2 butternut squashes here from our fields. So the one in this hand is much darker than this one. This one has cured much longer than this one. So what that means is that we harvested this, put it in the greenhouse where it's sunny, it's warm, and basically the curing process is just making sure this outer shell gets nice and hard. And then once that is nice and hard, you're storing it for 6 months or more, depending on the variety. This lighter color, you can still eat it now, but it won't last as long in storage.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can cure it, right? We can leave it in our greenhouse. We're lucky we have a greenhouse.
Yeah, we're very lucky we have a greenhouse, but if you don't, somewhere warm and sunny if possible.
Yeah, and they will cure to different variations in the field.
Yes.
So, like, some of them you pick, they'll be nice and dark brown, and the next one will be nice and light.
Yeah, and another good way to tell in the field is by looking at the stem. So the one that's been cured longer is kind of shriveled and more hard, whereas the one in this hand is still really green and more plump and kind of still has some life to it. That's a good way to tell.
And how can you tell on something like an acorn squash where they're all just green?
Yeah, so we're looking for like how woody the stem is, but also the orange spot on it too.
And is there anything in relation to winter squashes that don't store well?
That don't store well. Spaghetti squashes don't store super, super long. We do categorize them as a winter squash because you harvest them in the fall with other winters, but that's one that doesn't store super, super long. Or anything that has kind of a super soft outside shell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My spaghettis don't last very long anyway.
Yeah.
So,
You might get like 2 or 3 months max with the spaghetti squash, but I've seen squash like 8 months.
and where are you storing it? Are you storing it on your counter? Do you need like a cold room?
Yeah, someplace dark and cool and dry is where you want to store them.
Yeah.
So for us at home, we store them in our basement. Our basement's in the middle of winter, usually around 10 to 15 degrees. It's dark, and then the humidity is probably around 50 to 60%.
Because we moved to a new place, I actually lost the place that I stored my squash. We stored it in an unheated, insulated garage. So it stayed about like 7 to 12, depending on how sunny it was, because there was windows in there. But yeah, now I don't have a place to store them, so I'm just going to have to eat them.
Yep. Then you just have to eat squash.
My husband will be thrilled. Thrilled. And don't forget, we are giving away some bulbs. What
Yes.
time is it? 3:30.
The bulb giveaway, the answer to the question, which we haven't announced yet, is in either the spring or the fall bulb catalog, so please have those ready.
I'm excited. All right, Victor, there we go. Tiffany, what types of organic matter are best to add to my soil in the fall? How can I use fall leaves and other organic debris to enhance soil quality?
Yep, so you can add compost manure in the fall. If you want to add like a mulch of like seaweed or leaves or straw, those are all really good mulches too, and then you can work those into the soil in the spring.
Yeah, you just rake your leaves right onto your garden bed.
Yep.
And that'll protect your perennials.
That's what we do around our raspberries, blackberries, grapes at home. Yeah, works very well.
Yeah, I can't do that because I got like 3 acres of raspberries.
We do it really lazy because we have a fence right next to them and they all just blow into the fence and sit there, so we actually don't have to do any raking.
So like when you say like we do it, you mean Nature?
I mean Mother Nature.
Mother Nature
Yes.
does it. That's really funny. Yeah, we don't have any. We've got like 2 poplar trees and like a couple of willows, and that's it for trees on our property.
Yeah.
We do have some Christmas trees. So yeah, we don't have much raking that we're gonna do. We have goldenrod and aster like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
I could be a goldenrod farmer. Steve, should I till the soil or leave it undisturbed until spring?
Leave it undisturbed till spring. Any of that root mass that's there from the previous year's growth will help hold it, especially during any rains that happen in the fall or winter and during snow melt as well. You don't want any of that soil running away. Soil running away means nutrients you're losing, so you don't want that.
Yeah, you might even notice like potato farmers are harvesting their crops right now, and they will try and plant something once they're done,
Yep.
just to hold the soil so it's not bare soil for the winter.
And even if you're driving around like after like a corn harvest, you'll see like the stubble on the field, and they'll leave that all winter because that root mass is still there holding that soil together.
Yeah, to prevent runoff and whatnot.
Yep.
Natasha has a question. For growing pumpkins, what works best, cow manure or sheep manure, or what would you recommend?
So I think you're fine with either of those. Personally, and within the family here at Vessie's, we use a lot of sheep manure, but you'd be fine to go with either.
And what would be the difference between them?
Just basically a different animal. I mean, it all depends on their diet, what the makeup of the nutrients is going to be, but they're both going to give you really good results.
And like there's like
There's seaweed compost as well.
Yeah.
That works very, very well. So actually, I would say that almost has a cult following. Like anything from the sea, like seaweed mulch, seaweed manure, the Sea Boost fertilizer. Yeah.
And you can buy, what are they, like chicken manure pellets?
Yep.
What are they called?
Basically, that is basically granular chicken manure. We use that at home. You apply that every 4 to 6 months. That works really, really well. It's very, very low in nutrients, so it's not like a one-time application. You just kind of go once a month before a rain or something and sprinkle it on.
Yeah. Pumpkins are big feeders because they grow
Yes.
big fruit.
Yeah, lots of nitrogen. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd be also fertilizing as well as compost.
Yeah.
Mary Lou, best way to store my dahlias in a cool room, okay.
Yep. Yep. As long as they're bare root and they're dry, yep, you'd be fine to store them.
Yeah, we haven't had frost yet.
Nope.
We've been like teetering on that edge.
Yep.
We actually took some of our row cover that we sell, and we covered all of our peppers.
Try to get the final harvest and try to get them to ripen before they're gone. So.
We have so many peppers. We did prune them back, so like all the little baby peppers that wouldn't have time to mature, and all the excess leaves. But there's just so many peppers, we can't lose them to frost.
No.
So we covered all those. And then what else? We have tomatoes in the
We
field.
still have some tomatoes left.
We've got broccoli in the field.
Got some broccoli, some brassicas. There's some pumpkins left in the field too.
Yeah, we did harvest almost all the pie pumpkins and squashes because we will donate those to the food bank once the staff get their hands on them and they're done.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else is in the field? Nothing. Oh,
Just
I
carrots
guess,
and parsnips. Those are the last two things for us to look at.
Is there still celery in the field?
Yes, there is some celery in the field as well.
And leeks.
We don't have any leeks this year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marie, how can I test and improve the pH of my soil?
So we do sell, and Tracy, I'm going to rely on you. We do sell some pH meters that you can use to test your soil. They work fantastic, and the other way to test it is by taking a soil sample and sending it away to your provincial extension, like agriculture kind of facilities, like different universities, University of Guelph. They do all those things for you. They come with different tests, so you can pay different amounts depending on how much you want to know, but they're relatively inexpensive for just like a bare minimum test.
Yeah, and now would be a great time to test because
Yep.
you can make a plan over winter and how you're going to amend your
Well,
soil.
this is actually the perfect time to do it, especially for pH. You know, if you have a low pH and you need to amend that by adding lime, lime usually takes several months before it really changes the soil, so this is the time to do it.
And would you be applying lime to your lawn now or waiting until spring?
No, you can do that now as well.
Yeah. All right. The last question I have.
Okay.
How do I prevent soil compaction over the winter months?
Don't walk on your soil, don't drive on your soil, don't dig it up. Stay out of it if it's really, really wet, which is probably going to be all winter.
Yep.
Yep.
Probably don't like snow blow on top of your garden
Yeah.
if you're worried about compaction.
I would say driving and like digging would be the two worst things you could do for your soil for compaction.
Yeah. I'm excited for spring at my new house because I don't know what's there for bulbs.
That's the fun part.
It could be none. It could be some. I am going to have to get some bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to get some bulbs. I was lazy and I didn't order any, and my favorite bulbs are sold out on the website, so I'm going to have to like go see our bulb manager and be like, do you have any of those left?
Yeah. I did get my favorite bulbs this year. We got the baby boomer daffodils,
Nice.
and I'm very excited for those.
Mine is the Antoinette, the bouquet tulips,
Yes.
because one stem produces like 6 to 8 tulips, and they change colors. They last such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obsessed with them.
Yeah.
I I don't know, I was dumb to think that I could just get them whenever I want, but they're sold out.
Yep.
We don't have them in the store either. I was looking. When I was
That's usually the way it goes when we want something. I'm like, oh, I got a week, and the week passes, and they're popular for a reason. So.
Well, it seems like when our spring catalog comes out, like our mulberries and our plum trees, they're gonna sell out so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want a mulberry bush, you need to get it like as soon as you get the catalog in the mail and order it.
And that's a great point. If anyone wants anything now from the spring catalog, I believe a lot of that stuff is on our website. Now you can order it now, but it won't get shipped to you until the spring. So if you really, really want something that you've been wanting for a couple of years and haven't been able to get because of inventory strain, you can do that now.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Me and my husband need to sit down and figure out what we're going to plant. A lot of these things are going to take multiple years before you're going to get a harvest off them.
Yep.
So we need to start now to get our apple trees in, our pear trees. Kiwis are back.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to the kiwis. We're going to plant those. I don't even know where they're going, but we're getting them. And we're going to put them in and start.
Yes.
And then eat from them from like the rest of our lives. But
Yep.
the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take to harvest.
Yes, I agree.
And what else? Any more questions? Should we do our giveaway?
We can do our giveaway now.
All right. So
Maybe remind everyone what we had for one last time.
I got 3 packages of Big Love tulips. These will grow 18 to 24 inches. I have 3 packages. There's 10 in a bag. And we'll give all 30 to one person.
Sure.
What's our question?
Okay, so have your spring and your fall catalog for 2024-25 ready. So the question is, what is the first and last name of Vessi Seeds bulb manager?
Our bulb manager, fabulous bulb manager.
Hint, hint, he has been on this podcast before.
He has.
Yes.
And we would accept one of 2 answers
Yes.
because he does have a protege.
Yes.
Who's also been on this podcast.
Yes.
So whoever can name them first,
Yes.
we will mail these to you.
Yeah. And
Oh
anyone,
my God.
That was quick.
That was so
That was
fast.
very quick.
These people must know them. Look at all the people.
Whoa.
God, everybody knows. I'm going to leave it up to Tracy to say who won because I had multiple hit mine.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm not on Wi-Fi. I'm just on the mobile network.
Yes.
So whoever won, we will message you
Yes.
and get your address. And Canada Post has picked up our mail today. We will send them out first thing tomorrow. You should receive them beginning of next week, which is like prime bulb planting time.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
I haven't planted any of mine yet, though.
We haven't planted any of ours yet either. This weekend.
This weekend. No, I'm going to have to go over and get some. Maybe. Natasha came in first. All right, Natasha, you won. We will get those in the mail to you. Send us a private message. Please do not put your address on the internet, and we will get those out to you. It was great to be back.
It was great to be back.
We're in a new location. We're going to kind of keep changing things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We have some big plans.
Got some big plans. Look for the catalog in the next month or so. We'll be back in 2 more weeks.
I'm very excited for the catalog.
I'm very excited for the catalog too.
And I'm very excited to go outside tomorrow.
Yes.
Do some work. It was
Yes.
freezing cold yesterday. It was like
It's
1
freezing
degree.
cold. You know, I like planting stuff, but also it's so satisfying to see everything come out and you're like, it was a good season.
And we're actually doing something different before we go. We're not pulling all of our annuals out this year,
We
are we?
aren't this year. So all of the flowers in our flower trials this year, anything that's non-woody, we're actually going to leave and we're going to cover everything with the textile mulch for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to practice what we preach. We're going to leave that root mass there to help with soil erosion. And also those plants under the black textile mulch should break down through the winter and all that will go back into the soil.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how that works and see if it makes a difference on our weed pressure.
Yes.
Weed pressure.
Yeah.
My least favorite thing.
I know.
Well, if everything grew as well as weeds did.
I know, right?
We could be like lamb's quarter farmers.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
like chickweed.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, they love to grow.
they do.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you right here in 2 weeks. We won't take another 6-week break, I promise.
We were just super busy and we just, there was some other things going on. So
Yeah. So we'll see you right back here in 2 weeks. Thanks for all your questions, and have a good weekend.
Thank you so much.
You've got to turn it off now.